Hey guys, this video it's both a reminder for myself and a video that I'm hoping might help someone else who's in a similar place that I've been in. Um, and I guess I'll start with, this earlier this morning, I was having a really tough time this morning. I felt really, really low. My mind would not shut off. Like the thoughts that kept kind of circling around were they were just very low, all like thoughts about things that I feel like in my mind I can't do. Some of them are just thoughts that have been circling in my head for years. And at this point, it's kind of just like an echo. Like, you can how you can think something and you're not actively, that sounds so weird, but it's like, it's a thought. And it's just like, it's like a cloud that kind of crosses your mind. And you're not actively thinking the thought, but you thought it so long that like it kind of sometimes echoes, like it'll kind of pass through, like, hey, remember me? Kind of thing. Except the thoughts are more like what I can't do, or a lot of like self-fulfilling prophecy type thoughts, like I'm not going to make it through certain things. Um, and it I felt like energetically I was really fighting that they were there, like fighting that the thoughts were there, and just fighting that I felt sad. Now, for me, I thought for a long time that sadness and depression were one and the same, and they're not. They're not. In my experience, I have found that sadness kind of there's like a lightness in the sadness. And when I say lightness, I don't mean, oh, there's like happiness in it per se. Um, I mean lightness more as in terms of like weight, lightness. There's like a lightness, like bright lightness that I've noticed in sadness, and like a lighter like weight lightness in sadness that I don't feel or see at all when I'm just straight up depressed. Like depressed, like the depressed state, it just feels heavy and thick. And I've been noticing that it's the depressive states, because again, I used to think they were one and the same, which means I thought depression was an emotion, like feeling tone, in the same way that sadness is, and it's not. Depression is starting to feel more like a state of mind that still has feeling, but like a really heavy, thick state of mind, that just feels really energetically heavy. And what I noticed this morning, going back to how I was feeling this morning, was that I felt like I had a bunch of thoughts. My mind wouldn't really turn off. Like meditation was not really working for me in the way that it usually does. And it actually started to spiral into more of a suicidal kind of space. And the reason why I'm sharing this, it's not like, oh, like, woe is me kind of thing, or like for any sort of like pity kind of thing. I'm sharing this because when I hit that point, normally I get stuck in that state, and it can last on the good end hours, but it could last for like days, months kind of thing. And I know I'm not the only one who can get stuck in that kind of space. But this time I remembered and had the willingness. to let my pride go a little bit and ask for help. And that could look very different depending on literally the day. Sometimes that could be like calling someone. Sometimes it could be, reaching out and doing something that I normally enjoy. But if you're in that state, that's very hard. But this go around, I just asked Spirit for help. I know there are different words that people might use for that. I'm using Spirit this go round. And I was just like, how can I start to shift out of the state? Sometimes when I get stuck in that state, I'm focusing on the why. And this time I was just like, what can I do to help me get out of this state? Like start to get some relief kind of thing. And then I let it go. I wasn't focusing on what that help was supposed to look like, because when I get in that state, it can be really easy to focus on that. And I say just as if this is easy, but I know when you're in that state, it's not always easy to do this. I acknowledge that. I listened. I listened for a still, stable voice through the cacophony of thoughts that was like, and emotions and just density type energy that I was feeling. And I'm more like auditory, like my clear stuff's more in the auditory. So I just very lightly heard, go outside. And there's something I like to do like outside that I had been holding off for like several days. And so I was pissed about doing it because I was like, no. But I it's weird because it's like I let that anger and frustration be there, which is not always easy because I learned a while back that anger was not okay to feel. So I would usually try and fight that. And then I'd be sitting there like energetically and mentally fighting emotional states and just states of mind that was just there. It's like, okay, it can be there and we're going to go outside anyway. So I went grumbling and it didn't really bring me joy like it normally did, but I felt a slight shift, and the shift was enough. I'm like, okay, for me to notice. And then I still felt like I'm not ready to go back in the house yet. And I didn't want to walk, but that was the nudging I got. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm gonna walk a couple of circles around, like I was at a park. I'm gonna walk a couple circles and I just let it go. And what I found was as I started to walk, the thoughts and the depression kind of it's like it kind of creeped up like in intensity a little bit. And I don't know how I did it, but I was able to feel how sad it made me feel. Not depressed, but just sad. And it's the sadness actually felt better than the depression. I guess it was a roundabout way of putting that. I just felt sad. I could feel a little bit of tears coming up. I couldn't. It didn't know it was only a couple, but I could feel it, and I felt the sadness. And it was like in that moment, the depressive state just started to transform, like or alchemize a little bit into sadness, which was lighter. And then anger would start to come up because I'd be like angry that I felt how I felt. And then when I started to fight that again, then I went right back into like the depressive state. And it was kind of like, it was like waves, you know, and then I start to feel sadness. And it's like it just converted in like, you know, like that heavy depressive feeling. It's like it started to convert into sadness, and I could feel the lightness in the sadness. And so even though I still felt really sad, I felt relieved. All from a walk. And it's a very, I don't know. I don't know what else to really say. It's just very interesting, and it was relieving. And it created an opening for me to explore doing something a little different instead of going back into my usual depressive cycles. So then I came home and I took a shower and I enjoy taking showers, you know, and I just found, even though time felt very slow when I was in that depressed state, like it felt like hours, it was an hour and a half, which for me is pretty good because I could be in that for like days or weeks or months. Um, and so I guess the message that I wanted to share, the main point of me wanting to share this experience is that I often get caught up that in this idea, especially when you see so many happy moments on social media or like other people that seem like they are it can seem like everybody is doing so freaking well. Like, what am I doing? Kind of thing when I'm not feeling that great. And so if you're one of those people that's in that space, um, sometimes it can be really easy to expect that relief looks like, oh, I'm doing great. Everything is just amazing. And I, I find I'm needing to be reminded sometimes that sometimes just that slight relief from depression to sadness, or depression even to anger, because like I've noticed there can be a lightness in that, which is different from rage. Rage is I don't really feel a lot of lightness with that yet, but I've noticed even like sadness or even anger and frustration feels lighter and better to me than depression. So if that is the step, if that's like the little half step, you know, that comes with relief in that moment, that's okay. It doesn't have to be you're smiling, happy, and full of energy for you to feel relief. Like I said, I think this video was more of a reminder for me, but I do hope that it helped someone else that might need it. So that's all for this video.